public community call. We're going to have an eventful 1 hour. I promise you that. All right, first things first. We're going to record this call. As you can see, we're going to put this recording in our YouTube channel, which is put up there in the slides, which is aka.ms/m365pnp/videos. I'm also going to put the link in the chat window shortly. You can follow us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev or Azure AD, or you can also follow me on LinkedIn at Nandeesh Swami to get updates about what's happening on the public community call and all the other events that we do throughout the year, right? This call is hosted every third Thursday of the month. Just like this time, we'll again have, we were already planning on the next call, so you will have something interesting to hear. So we will have a survey that will be shared at the end of the hour, and we'd love to get your feedback on how are we doing with these calls. Perfect. All right. Emily, take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. So my name is Emily. I am a product manager that's focused on our Microsoft Authentication Libraries for the JavaScript ecosystem. So what are we going to talk about today? As he said, we have a jam-packed hour for you. What we are focusing on today is MSAL.js. I shorthand it to MSAL.js. That's the Microsoft Authentication Libraries for JavaScript. We're going to talk about what that is, what you can use MSAL.js for. If you have been working in the Microsoft ecosystem for long, you may also be familiar with the acronym ADAL. We're going to talk about what has changed between ADAL and MSAL. We're going to talk about why you should be staying up to date on your latest MSAL version. And then Dogan will also be walking through a sample migration. We do have a Q&A at the end. In the meantime, though, if throughout this presentation you have questions, please put those questions in chat and we will try to address them as they come up. So to start, the Microsoft Authentication Library for JavaScript. I use this as an umbrella term, MSAL.js. Technically under MSAL.js in this JavaScript ecosystem, we have a number of different packages within it that you could be using. So you may also hear the term MSAL browser. MSAL JavaScript also includes MSAL Node, also includes MSAL Angular, and also includes MSAL React. In a broader umbrella term, though, what is MSAL.js? What is this umbrella library? So as I called out, this includes various JavaScript frameworks such as Angular, React, Node. This is a SDK, software development kit, that is developed by Microsoft. We have full-time Microsoft employees such as myself and others on the development team that are focused on this full-time. This is what I show up to work and I'm excited to work on. But this is also an open source SDK. We do welcome contributions. I have a link to the slide, and we can also put a link in the chat to the contributions guide. You can see all of the code that we have there. We welcome contributions. We will review every PR that comes in from the community. It doesn't necessarily mean that every PR is guaranteed to be included because this is such a large library and that is used in lots of places. That's actually the next bullet point there. This is a SDK that's used internally by Microsoft. So your favorite Microsoft products, such as, Office.com or Outlook on the web, use MSAL.js. But this also is a library that is open source and available for the community to be used externally as well. The other note about MSAL.js is that we, as I called out, we have employees that are constantly working on this. So we do release the first Monday of the month. There are some nuances there, like if Monday happens to be a company holiday, we may release that Tuesday or may release the following Monday. But every month you should be expecting a new MSAL.js release. This slide is showing here what when I say MSAL.js and I reference that we have different packages underneath there, this is the package structure that we mean. So this is the MSAL browser, which is our vanilla JavaScript implementation. We have our Angular, we have our React that pull from this MSAL browser. And then as I called out, we also have MSAL Node. MSAL Node is a library that works with public and confidential clients. You can see this little box around this MSAL browser, Angular and React. Their goal there is for our single page applications. Which then leads us into our next, what can you use MSAL.js for? The bulk of the library is focused on our single page application use cases. It does work for other web applications. It does work for, as I called out, Node uses confidential client applications. You may see this for your confidential clients, for your daemons. And then if those are the applications that you can use MSAL.js for, if it's a Microsoft Authentication Library, what identity providers is it best for authentication? And that's the Microsoft identity providers. So the Microsoft identity providers do include Azure AD, so Azure Active Directory. You may hear me shorthand that to AAD. These are our work or school accounts, our enterprise accounts. We also do have the Microsoft consumer identities. These are the personal accounts. You may hear me refer to those as our MSA. And then this library does work with our B2C, our business to consumer offering. And then if you have been working in this ecosystem a lot, as I mentioned, you may be familiar with ADAL. ADAL is our previous iteration of the library. So ADAL was originally released in 2015. This was focused just on our enterprise flows. It only uses implicit flow. It points to some of our version 1 of our server endpoints. ADAL is a library that is currently in maintenance with an end of life plan for June 2023. And what we mean by end of life is that this will stop getting security updates. This is a library that we really want people moving off of, and we want you moving off of that to MSAL. So this is MSAL is our Microsoft Authentication Libraries. This is our modern authentication library. This is the focus of the team, is really improving MSAL. If you are an application that is still on ADAL, you might be asking, why am I being pressured to move to MSAL? What is so great about MSAL? Why does everyone keep talking about it? Some of the benefits of MSAL is that there is proactive token refresh. This enables fewer authentication prompts to the user. This also improves the resiliency of the application. One great benefit of MSAL, if you're very familiar with the OIDC flows, is that this uses our auth code flow with Pixie. This is an improved flow compared to the implicit flow. One benefit also of MSAL, as I called out previously, what you can use MSAL for, is that this is one SDK for the enterprise, consumer, and B2C identity providers, authentication flows that you may be using. MSAL also enables the conditional access policies and the continuous access evaluation events that you might be leveraging as a customer that's using Azure AD. If you are an IT admin and you want to enable these types of policies, MSAL is the library to use to enable these types of policies. One other important question here about why should you stay up to date on our MSAL versions. So on this slide, I'm talking about MSAL right now as it exists, why you should be moving to it away from ADAL. One important note about MSAL, as I said, we release every month. So we are constantly working on improving this library. And so it is very important for you as a JavaScript application developer, you as someone that cares about staying up to date with authentication, should be looking at updating your MSAL libraries to stay on the most up-to-date version. Some things that are coming in the future, thanks to these Microsoft Authentication Libraries, if what I said previously, what exists now in the library, was not enough to tempt you to do this migration, one important factor is we are constantly innovating on this. Some exciting innovations that are coming soon is this proof of possession. It's our token protection, our native operating systems. We are constantly improving the maintenance of the library as well. So we're updating our ECMAScript to 2020. I know just based on the GitHub issues that I get, that's a hot topic for people, is wanting to make sure you're on the latest JavaScript ecosystem. This also includes staying up to date, is dropping support for some of the deprecated items that exist. Internet Explorer is a longtime favorite of many of us, but it is deprecated. We are no longer supporting Internet Explorer as a company and then also as a library. There's also some improvements that come out, our cache and other general performance improvements. A fun thing about dropping our Internet Explorer support is that this means it's going to be a slightly smaller library. It loads a little easier inside of your application. So there are both exciting big feature releases that happen with our monthly releases, and also just minor improvements that day to day can make your life easier as a developer by staying up to date on the latest MSAL versions. I just very quickly ran through why MSAL.js is what I spend my time working on, why it's a thing that you might be interested in, what it is, what you can use it for, why you should be using MSAL instead of ADAL, why you should be staying up to date on the latest versions. Start moving into some of the samples and some of the code that, the demo code that Dogan's going to walk through.
I'll go ahead and share my screen then. All right, so hello everyone, I'm Doğan. I'm an engineer with the developer guidance team. And what I want to talk about in the rest of our time is to discuss some of the main aspects that you need to be aware of when you're migrating to the latest version of MSAL JS v2 at the moment, especially from ADAL to MSAL. Specifically, we will talk about how to migrate a single page application, but pretty much everything we will cover here, to discuss here, applies in a similar manner to migrating from ADAL node to MSAL node if you're in that particular situation. So to take a general overview of what we are going through when we are migrating our apps is the main aspect of difference is how you're going to configure your application, how the configuration differs between ADAL and MSAL. These are mainly about the authority differences, the endpoints that your apps are using to sign in users and obtain tokens. Then we'll talk about differences about the redirect URI types, the different types of redirect URIs MSAL versus ADAL uses. We'll touch upon on how API permissions differs, how obtaining an access token differs between ADAL versus MSAL. We'll mention the supported account types that you can work with MSAL. And then we'll get into the differences between the public API surface of ADAL versus MSAL. We'll talk about the name and signature changes between the methods. We'll talk about using promises instead of callbacks, using accounts instead of users, and how error handling differs between ADAL and MSAL. And along the way, we will touch upon how the token caching and renewal behavior works with MSAL as opposed to ADAL. So I'll stop sharing my slides here, and I'll take you to the demo app we have today. So it's a very simple one, and I'll go ahead and make sure that my server is running. So I have a simple HTML page here, which imports the ADAL package from a content delivery network. And then I have some DOM elements on my UI with some behavior attached to them. I have a sign in button, a sign out button, a get token button, and a section for displaying the username. I'm serving this page through a simple Express.js server, which serves the ADAL endpoint and loads my index.html file. And then for my authentication and UI logic, I have a outage.js file that contains that logic here. There you could see that I have a very simple method function here that updates the UI, provided a user object obtained from ADAL. And then I have a section here that configures my ADAL authentication context object, which is the object that exposes the login and acquire token methods from ADAL. I have this application, a single page application on Azure AD. If we look at how this is represented on Azure AD, as I said, it's a single page app of interest to us. Our ADAL app is using the V1 endpoints because this is what the default endpoint for ADAL is. On Authentication Blade, we could see that we have a redirect URI configured with localhost 3000/ADAL, and it is of type web. And a little bit below, we could see that since ADAL.js is using implicit flow, we have checked the implicit flow boxes. And then back to my code. Once I instantiate the authentication context object, I have some logic here for handling the authentication flow. So if I briefly take a look at what this app does, I have a very simple UI, just a simple login button. And if I go ahead and click this, it will take me to Azure AD. I'll select an account here, and then it will display my username. If I click Get Token, it'll get me an access token. You can crack open this on JavaScript. It's a token for Microsoft Graph with the scope user read. It's a version 1 token, and it has a validity for about 1 hour. And then I have a logout button that if I click will log me out of Azure AD. So that's pretty much what it does. It's a very simple app. And what I want to cover is that what you need to go through to migrate this from ADAL to MSAL. So to do that, you can follow pretty much our migration guide on the Microsoft documentation. It touches upon all the aspects that you need to go through to migrate this app. We could start with the prerequisites. You could see here that if you're going to use MSAL.js v2, you need to set your redirect URI to type single page application, which associates the behavior to use authorization code flow when we are signing in users with PXE, that is proof key for code exchange, which is a mechanism that prevents your authorization code to be used by other actors. So we might as well go ahead and start doing that. So in my app registration, I'll add a new platform. I'll choose a single page application. And then I'm going to use I'm going to try to use the same redirect URI. And then you will get an error here if you try to use the very same redirect URI, because Azure AD won't be able to distinguish whether it should use the web behavior or the single page application behavior when responding to this URI. So we need something different here. I'm going to go ahead and use MSAL instead. All right, now I have this URI, and I don't have to uncheck these boxes. MSAL is smart enough to let Azure AD know that I want to use the authorization code flow. I'll just have to copy this guy here. And then I go back to my code. And there, first, I want to send this endpoint from my server. So maybe let's go ahead and do that first. Just restart my server. And then I can go to my index.html file where I'm loading the ADAL package. If I keep following the guide, the next step would be to install or import MSAL. I'm using a content delivery network, so I'll do the same. This one is slightly outdated, so I'm just going to follow this link to get the latest version. And we can just go ahead and copy this guy. And let's comment out this section and add MSAL.js here. The current version is 2.34. And now I have that. I can go to my outh.js file and update the MSAL, the application configuration there. So I need to eventually update this UI function because with MSAL.js, you now work with accounts instead of users. And a user can have more than one account. If you're like me, you have dozens of accounts. And with MSAL.js, you can support all of them in the same application. You can manage multiple accounts in this very same app. So we're going to come back to this. I'm moving to ADAL configuration here, and that is what we're going to get rid of. So if I follow the guide a little bit more further down, now I need to instantiate the main MSAL application object. And I can go ahead and do that. And let's comment out this part. And now I need an MSAL config object here. So maybe I can get rid of this guy. And instead define MSAL config. Let's also copy paste this part, actually. Oops. So at the minimum, I need a client ID, and I'll go ahead and copy paste this. Since my application is single tenant, I also need to specify the tenant. We don't have the tenant property name anymore, so we will use authority instead, which is a combination of the instance and the tenant. Hopefully this is correct. And we will also assign our new redirect URI. And that'll be localhost 3000 MSAL. Now, this covers pretty much our authentication configuration. If we don't specify any cache location by default, it will use the session storage. But let's go ahead and be explicit about it. And then I have some login configuration here, so I'm gonna get rid of this as well. And I'll use the login configuration for MSAL.js. A little bit more down, I could find that. Let's use this. And that pretty much covers everything I want to cover here. Now, for instance, if I want to declare my application to be capable of handling continuous access evaluation events or similar, I can go ahead and use more configuration options. I could follow the full list of available options on MSAL.js repo. So for instance, let's declare our app to be capable of CEA. And that pretty much covers our MSAL configuration. Now I can use this instance to update my authentication logic. So let's start with the simple ones. I'm going to go back to the guide and see what's the next step I need to do. So I need to now switch to the MSAL API. Some of the method names are changed, the method signatures are changed, but pretty much I can find everything I need here. I'm going to get rid of the login and logout methods first and use either pop-up or the redirect flow. Let's have actually a small variable here to decide if we should use pop-up or redirect. So I'll start with the simple ones. There we go. And if so, now I don't have any IntelliSense support, so I want to take care of this. Let's actually install the package itself. That'll be Azure MSAL browser. All right, and then let's start this. And I want VS Code to give me some IntelliSense support. So just for the moment, I'll have this here. And then later on, we will uncomment this section as well, because we are importing MSAL from a content delivery network. Now, if we go down there and update our sign-in methods, we're going to use login pop-up. This accepts a request object where you can define, for instance, the scopes you want the user to consent to. So that is another change when you move from ADAL to MSAL. ADAL had the concept of resource. MSAL still has the concept of resource, but you will now obtain access tokens for a given scope. So we could just define that. So let's say if previously we were acquiring a token for graph.microsoft.com, this could now be user read from the graph.microsoft.com resource. Or just by shorthand, it could be user read. And this returns a promise, so I can get that promise here and use this to update my UI. So let's do this. Let's console log this. Actually, yeah, pretty smart. And let's also actually do what? Let's set the active account as the account that we obtain after sign in. And I'm going to take this line here. All right. And if we're not using pop-up, we can use the redirect API. And once redirect happens, of course, what happens is that your application navigates away from your app, and the user is taken to Azure AD, where they enter their credentials, or if they have an active session with Azure AD, they might just sign in without any prompts. And then they'll be back to your application, and it will be a new instance to your app. And so we need to handle that redirect response. So let's go ahead and do that as well. I'm going to comment out this section. And if you look at the guide here, we could see that we now, instead of using handle window callback, we should use the handle redirect promise API. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay. Let's also put that. Oops. And if you have a response, so this promise will resolve with either a response if your application is actually returning from the redirect from Azure AD, or it will resolve to null if it doesn't return from Azure AD. So we'll check for the response here. And then we could do pretty much the same. And if it is not coming back from Azure AD, I could perhaps check for the any available account in the application cache. Let's instead use get all accounts. And then let's take the first one and use it to update our UI. All right. And if you have any errors, let's just console log them for the moment. All right, so that covers the sign-in function pretty much. Let's go ahead and do the same for sign-out. For sign-out, for logout, I'm going to use either logout pop-up or logout redirect. Let's use both. Okay, if you are using pop-up, let's do that. There we go. And else, okay, and then if we have, yep. And that pretty much covers the logout. Now we could go ahead and give a try to this, but I need to update my update UI function. So we don't have users anymore. We have the account object. So I'll replace that. And the account object will have the username. So I'll just use to display that. Now let's give this a try. Back to my app. I'll replace this, and oops, of course, we want to get rid of this because we can't use it here. And then I'll load my page again. And then you can see that MSAL starts logging some stuff. We'll go ahead and click our login button. This will take me away. And then since I already had an active session with Azure AD, I just signed in without any prompts, and I could see my username displayed on here. Let's also test the logout. And that seems to be working as well. Actually, I just logged out from the wrong account, but there we go. Okay, so that covers logging in and logging out. And now I want to go update our get token function. All right, so let's comment out this section. So if you're using acquire token API previously, that is now renamed to acquire token silent, and it requires an account object as a request parameter. So let's go ahead and do that. Right. So if you don't know what scope you're going to use when you're migrating from the V1 endpoint to V2, for the moment, you could just use a .default scope. This is a shorthand for saying that get me a token for whatever permissions I have defined on my app registration. But I'm just going to go ahead and use the user read. I also need to supply an account object, and let's get this here. I should be able to get the active account that I have set previously. And I'm not getting IntelliSense, so I want to put this guy back. All right, so I'll take this guy here. And that should be it. And if this succeeds, I want to get the response and use it to update my UI. I also want to console log the response. Let's see what's there. And then if there are any errors, let's catch them. Most likely you might get the interaction required error. For instance, if you're asking an access token for scopes that the user has not consented before, that is what you will get. Let's check for this error. And if that's the case, depending on whether we are using the pop-up or the redirect experience, we should cover this with either an interactive token request using pop-up or using the redirect API. Okay, so that pretty much covers it. Again, I'll get rid of my require statements here. And let's give this a try again. Let's refresh this page and try to get the token. And there we go. So instead of just the raw access token, as it was in ADAL, we'll get a full response from MSAL that has lots of useful information about when this token expires. It'll also contain an account object based on the set of tokens that MSAL just acquired. It will also contain an ID token claims that you can use to update your UI. It'll contain some information about what this token contains as permission, and some other useful data as well. So that pretty much covers every important aspect you need to touch upon when you're migrating your app from ADAL to MSAL. Now, one difference that MSAL has over ADAL is that, as I mentioned, it's using the authorization code flow to obtain access tokens. And its cache schema is different. And now the cache includes a refresh token that comes with this grant type. And that refresh token can be used to renew your access tokens. They're either expired access tokens or access tokens that are close to expire can be renewed with the refresh token. And if your refresh token is also expired, MSAL will attempt to silently renew that refresh token using the silent iframes, hidden iframes. And if you're using a browser that blocks third-party cookies, that will not work out because the cookie for Azure AD is considered a third-party cookie relative to that hidden iframe. And in that case, your users will see a prompt, an interactive token acquisition prompt. But unlike ADAL, this will only happen in every 24 hours instead of approximately every hour. And that's pretty much it. I can go back to my slides now and ask you guys if you have any questions. I have some useful links at the end of my slides, so let me know.
All right, I guess there are a couple of questions in the chat. Let's get to them. What is the best way to call a self-service password change policy after user has logged in? I use login redirect and password reset policy URL, and then after that password has changed successfully. Then I get two MSAL accounts, one with, okay, Gopal, do you want to come off mute and ask your query? Or Doğan, did you have anything to say there?
Yeah, that's pretty much a configuration you should make on Azure AD. With respect to your MSAL code, there won't be much change. As the name implies, it's a self-service password reset, and it's supposed to, I'm assuming it's supposed to happen without any code changes to your application. At least that's how it works in B2C at the moment.
Okay, we see David has put in 3 or 4 comments in there. David, happy to talk to you. Can you come off mute?
Yeah, sure.
All right, great. What are your questions? I see that you wanted to talk. Yeah.
They're ongoing, aren't they? The Angular stuff seems to be covered quite well, and the Blazor stuff seems to be covered quite well in the tutorials, but I feel that the React stuff is lacking a little bit more in your GitHub tutorials. Obviously, there's a lot. It's fragmented, so it's sometimes hard to find them. Maybe I've missed some of that. But again, Brock Allen and co have been doing a lot of talks about the back end for front end stuff, the iframes that are going to be a problem when browsers have all these blocked by 2024. I assume it is at the moment. So yeah, I'd love to know more. What's the plan to deal with the iframe being blocked? You just said it was 24 hours, which obviously helps because then we can do other smart things to handle that. That's really good. I never realized it was 24 hours now, so that makes things a little bit better. But really, I'm looking for more tutorials. There's a lot of pressure to use React, but then we're getting a lot of pressure to move away to something else completely because we're not finding good tutorials to know that we're doing the right secure thing with React. You done a video, sorry, Doğan, I don't know if that's how you say your name correctly, but you done a video of maybe 8 months ago now, similar React thing that you done just now. It was fantastic, really good. That was a separate app that you could, I think it was possibly to call the graph. But that was really good, really helpful. But again, I'd like to see something like that call in your own ASP web API, both integrated so that the token stays on the back end, but also what you've done as well, the 2 separate apps where we can call that and use the token that you just have. I think that's a little bit easier. I've already got that working. It's more just, it'd be good to see something to know that what I'm doing is secure, because that's what's most important to my boss. I know that was a lot, sorry.
No worries, no worries.
I think
I'll start with the.
Go ahead, Doğan.
Right.
Yeah, I just put in the link that the video that he was referring to. But then, yeah, you can address it, and then I had some proposals. But go ahead, yeah, start.
Sure. I'll start with the iframe question, or third-party cookies question. So what happens today is that, yeah, as I said, if the third-party cookies are blocked, the MSAL won't be able to refresh the refresh token silently in a hidden iframe, and you'll get a sort of a prompt. But if you already have an active session with Azure AD, that prompt will be just a flickering, and so the user experience, although less than ideal, won't be damaged much. And Emily, is there anything about the iframes or the third-party cookies that you want to add on top of that?
Yeah, so I'll just add, you talked about what the current experience is, fully in agreement there. When we are looking ahead, so we do know that most browsers, I think Chrome is one that is going next in 2024, looking at blocking third-party cookies by default. We are monitoring this. As of right now, we go with the approach that Doğan said, to make sure to have a fallback mechanism if we can't silently renew that mechanism, to do some sort of interaction required. We are watching and seeing what the browsers are doing in different spaces. What standards are they coming up with? What different APIs are they looking at? I don't have anything right now to share because it's a constantly evolving space as browsers get there. So another reason to stay up to date on your latest MSAL versions, because it will be these future versions. Whenever the browsers and we figure out what is best for us as a library to respond to that, you'll see those changes on the latest MSAL versions.
That's great, thanks. And I appreciate that. But I've done some testing on Brave and Safari, and it just wasn't working for me. I asked on Stack Overflow, and the suggestion was to stop blocking third-party cookies in the browsers. I can't get my users to do that across the board. So maybe I've done something wrong. So again, there's maybe a need for more complete tutorials, but it just broke on Brave and Safari altogether for me.
That's good feedback about breaking altogether, because what we would expect is that there is interaction required. So you may have a user prompt. We would not think that it would break entirely, but that is great feedback that we might need to add more to our tutorials to explain that for those scenarios.
There was plenty going on in the console, but unless I just fully refreshed the browser, it wasn't going anywhere. So the user wouldn't really know what was going on. But again, that might be on me. Maybe the code that I'd done wasn't correct.
Please reach out to us on GitHub repo. If there are any issues there, we could definitely help you out. We could take a look. I want to also get back to your other question about the more React work. You mentioned that there's much talk about the keeping tokens out of the browser with SPAs. You're referring to the backend for front-end pattern. We will have a sample on that shortly. That we will outline that technique. We also have some other alternatives there. One is the hybrid SPA code flow that essentially allows you to obtain tokens both in the front end and the back end, and so that you can obtain more sensitive, high privilege tokens in your secure backend instead of the front end side. That is another alternative. And of course, as Emily said, when the token binding work comes out, that will be the definitive solution to tokens in the browser, the security concerns about having tokens in the browser.
I'm ecstatic to hear the backend for front end examples coming. I'd love to see how you're going to alert us to that, because I really need it. The hybrid tutorial you're talking about, I followed that, and I'm sure. So I think when you go to the link, it says it's React with the hybrid that you're talking about. But then when you actually go to the tutorial, I think it's actually a desktop application it takes you to, rather than a React API tutorial.
Shouldn't be so. Maybe there was a mistake. I'll get you the right link for that.
That would be fantastic. Again, really appreciate this.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Doğan. We see Savas has his hand up. Go ahead, Savas.
Yeah, thank you, guys. Thanks, Doğan. Great presentation. So I have one question actually about the methods that are in the MSAL library. I mean, the background of this question is we have a real-time application which is constantly talking with a Power BI report to see the location of the trucks or whatsoever. Let's assume that's the case. And in this scenario, I mean, the background of this question is actually from the software development point of view. So do I need to keep the track of the access token, like when it was issued, because I know it will be expiring after, let's say, 90 minutes, or is there a method which I could just enroll, I mean, so that it notifies me and I receive a new access token before it expires?
Yeah, So that's one thing that MSAL is very cares a lot about is that you don't have to deal with the managing the token lifetimes. That's an important point for this SDK. And ideally, everything should be MSAL should handle renewal the tokens, caching and renewal of tokens. That means is that you only use the the recommended pattern that we recommend is that you always attempt to try to get a token silently using the acquire token silent method. And if that fails for some reason, MSAL will try to, if that token is expired or if it is close to expire, MSAL will try to renew it using the refresh token. If the refresh token is expired, MSAL will try to renew it using the hidden iframes. If none of these works, it will throw out an error saying that interaction is required. And then you're supposed to handle that with one of the interactive APIs, either the pop-up or the redirect one. But yeah, eventually the goal of the SDK is that this process of token renewal should be abstracted completely away.
Thanks, Doğan. So basically, I should follow the pattern on the docs, Microsoft.com. Always acquire token silent, and if it fails, go with the pop-up or redirect, and that's it. And don't deal with the timing and so on. Yep, thank you.
True. You're welcome.
Correct. I see Renil, your hand is up. Go ahead.
We have the account actively set up. Like, why do we need the user need to choose the account when they log out? And how do we avoid that situation?
Oh, you can. What you can do is there you can pass an account object to the MSAL's logout API. That is not guaranteed to 100% work. You could also additionally what you could do is that you could opt in to the optional ID token claim called login hint. And once you have this claim in your ID token, you can pass it to the logout APIs, and it's supposed to sign you out from that specific account that you have just given the login hint for.
So basically, the MSAL object dot, right? MSAL dot account dot login hint.
Pretty much the same, yeah. It's but you have to opt in for that claim on the app registration.
Right.
Got it.
Okay. Any other questions, folks? Feel free to come off mute. I see there are a couple of questions which Emily has handled. Okay, there's one question. Does Azure OpenAI deliver code base based on your Azure AD configuration, especially with MS365 developer environment? Well, okay, Nilesh, can you please expand a little on this?
Yes. Okay. I think before you respond to that question, can I get help on the previous question of mine? If there are similar samples, tutorials for C# and implementing same code behind APIs.
I think we have many, right, Doğan?
True.
Okay. You know what? Just put that out in the chat window.
Okay. And as the Azure OpenAI service has been released with GPT-4, if within my given environment of Azure AD configuration across multiple products or applications that I have in my solution, can I create a boilerplate code that will act as a SSO integration layer using the fundamentals you're teaching, where I don't have to spin my cycles, but Azure OpenAI can spit out that code?
I haven't tried it, but that sounds like interesting. I can definitely.
Because eventually it's becoming the same rut, right? We're repeating.
True.
All of us are repeating on the call here. We're here, which you have demonstrated to us. Like, what's the point in us investing our cycles in that era instead of focusing on our business intellect implementation?
True. No, that's something good to try. I haven't did it, but I will give it a try. I'll give it the ADAL code and ask it to give me back the MSAL code. That could be interesting. I've seen some libraries are now making use of OpenAI, the ChatGPT, in their documentation, and it seems to come up with some excellent results. But we don't have anything similar at the moment.
My specific question is not just about conversion here. My question is more about even using MSAL, right? I configure a developer environment, 365 environment. I get 25 tenants, and I want to sign in for them to get my MVP going. Why do I write this code from scratch?
No, I think that's a good point, right? I mean, we have some similar discussions behind the curtains. Nothing that we can share yet, but that's a very good thought process, and we are thinking in the same directions. I cannot really say will have the exact same solution, but there have been discussions. Emily, you were saying something.
I was just going to say what you were saying. This is a really interesting idea. I don't think I'm less familiar with our Azure OpenAI, but we can take a look into it and see.
And I'm happy to partner with you offline if you guys are interested, because number one is I also have a not totally sideline, but Microsoft 365 developer question into domain creation, which is kind of screwed up from last couple of months. So if there's anybody from that side can give me some cycles on guideline, that will be great. And I'm happy to talk with you offline.
Sure, sounds good.
I've sent you a LinkedIn invite on to a few. Happy to.
Yeah. Just ping me. I will probably loop you in with some of our 365 folks, Microsoft 365 folks.
Okay, but yeah, OpenAI capabilities will be great.
Okay, yeah, we take that feedback, and I think we have had multiple discussions. We will probably have something to share. I don't know if it's going to be through OpenAI or what, but then the whole idea about, okay, why do I need this library and all that? Yeah, that's a good point. Then yeah, we'll take that into consideration.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, to just put more color on that, paint on that part is, if it is going to be a paid service, I might as well get the most bang for the buck, right?
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Any other questions, folks? Okay, sounds good. We have a couple of blogs there where we'll have these videos released. I put in both the blogs in there. One is our, the blog Microsoft Identity Platform Community Call, where we put in all our blogs and videos for the community call. Also a new blog, Entra Identity Developer blog, where we'll have the separate section for this call, as well as some more interesting stuff that we are doing on the developers, scenarios for identity integration. Will be put in that blog, bookmark them. Here are some references that Doğan has put up in his slide. We will be sharing the slide in the blog, so you will be able to get to all of these links. Perfect. Anything you wanted to add here, Doğan?
No, I think we're in a good spot. Yeah, we will share those links. I try to outline the most important parts that you might, or the struggles that you might have when you're moving from ADAL to MSAL. And as I said, yeah, we discussed JS, but we also have some migration guide on ADAL node as well.
Perfect. All right. The next call is happening on the third Thursday of the month. We will have something interesting to share. We are thinking about doing something on the graph side, which is exciting to everyone. Looking forward to seeing you all on that call. Thanks a lot. You have a great one. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.